Welcome back to I Now Pronounce You Divorce, Malone Halley PC's podcast, where each week we talk to special guests generally who really touch on things that, we see our clients or potential clients going through, or they touch on things that are very close to our concerns. And so today we're joined by very special guests to talk about something which I've always been extraordinarily concerned with, especially as we start growing more and more attention to this issue. And I think everybody that's been to an airport recently has seen this issue come up, and that's involved in sex trafficking and other forms of exploitation. So can y'all please tell us who you are, what you do, and we can go from there?
Hi, I'm Tori Jones. I'm the Community Engagement Manager at FreeKind.
And I'm Lisa Kersey, and I'm the Executive Director at FreeKind.
So can you tell us a little about what FreeKind is, and, two-part question, the journey that led to its founding?
Sure, sure. So FreeKind is an anti-human trafficking nonprofit based in Virginia. We're focused on preventing human trafficking in our communities and also supporting local survivors, adult survivors, on their journey to finding freedom and healing. The founding of the organization dates back to 2012 when our co-founders, it was a husband and wife. He was an attorney by background, and his daughter, I can't remember if she was high school or college, but she had written a paper on the issue of human trafficking and asked him to like edit it or whatever. And he was like, wait, what? He had no idea. And so he and his wife were talking. They're like, what do we do about this? Meanwhile, he had been asked to help with another nonprofit that was based in Richmond because Virginia was so far behind in having any laws on the books about the issue. And so he was helping with them at the time, got this thing from his daughter, and they had no intention of starting a nonprofit, but some volunteers were getting together and getting really excited about it. And then for different reasons, a military move and a this and a that. And before they knew it, these passionate volunteers had gone in different directions, and they were like, what do we do now? And they said, well, we can't not do anything. We really need to have this here. And so they decided to do it. And it really started in a place of, if you remember, think back to 2012, really to a place of awareness. He would talk to anybody who would listen, trying to help people understand that human trafficking is close to home. It's happening here in Virginia. This is not something that happens over there. This is something happening right here, and we need to pay attention. And meanwhile, he was continuing to work on, legislative advocacy.
Besides human trafficking, is there any other forms of abuse or exploitation that tend to bring individuals to your company?
Well, interesting question, because we do meet people who are experiencing, homelessness or addiction or other kinds of abuse, even domestic violence. And the interesting thing is any and all of those have intersections with human trafficking, but sometimes doesn't mean that it's less horrific for the person dealing with it. But sometimes they are not trafficking victims, but they certainly, because of those other issues, may well be vulnerable to it. So we work hard to just connect them with other friends in the community that we have, other resources that can help them with their issue, in hopes that we prevent them from ever needing to be a client of ours.
I think when you're talking about exploitation, what we see in the divorce community is really tied to this, partner idea, people that are in a relationship, and it seems normal from the outside, right? Like you have somebody and they're going to do social events, they're involved in their community. But when you dig in deeper, you find that there's some extreme exploitation that seems to be taking place. So how do y'all define exploitation to help somebody realize, like, the light bulb kicks on and says, oh goodness, I'm in this situation?
Yeah, yeah. So we like to the definition of human trafficking is basically force, fraud, or coercion has to be proven. And so at the core, we always say being trafficked is the being exploited. It's exploiting someone's vulnerability.
Mhm.
And so ultimately, and like you said, in those relationships, that person knows you intimately. So they're taking things that, are sensitive or trauma and using it to exploit to get you to do X, Y, and Z. So,
Mhm.
that's an unfortunate, process that I don't even want to use it, but it's almost like a form of gaslighting. we have a lot of time. We do a lot of work in the jails, and those light bulb moments go off a lot of times when
Mhm.
we're explaining what healthy relationships are, what, healthy boundaries are,
Mhm.
how you should be treated, what this is, what that. Most people don't realize, like you were saying, that they're even victims. And it's that exploitation, twisting their thoughts, their feelings to get them to do something.
Yeah, we talk about with our youth and with adults, this normalization that can take place, right? So I often will use in general crowds of people the example of if you have a roommate or if you get married and somebody is like, why do you load the dishwasher that way, like that's all wrong. That's like a really benign example, but like whatever happened in your home, that was the right way, that was the way that you did it. But if I've been exposed to things, whether I observed it or whether it happened to me, whether that was physical, emotional, or sexual abuse that might have occurred, that is something that sadly, and the psychologists and neuroscientists will talk to you about this, but i- it's become, it's what I know, it's familiar to me. So even if if I don't like it, even if it's wrong, I might accept it a little bit more because it's familiar to me. That happened in my family. That's just how it is. Some people, do think that that's just how it is. Other people, it bothers them, but you know, you have these overriding things like Tori was saying, where it's like, well, but he or she does this for me or that for me, or we have this going on, or we have kids together, or whatever the way we rationalize it in our own minds might be, or I'm afraid to be alone, so I'm going to, whether again, like that's in a regular marriage, whether that's in a trafficking relationship, we make choices about what we're willing to I don't wanna use this phrase, but to put up with, what we're willing to endure, right? And so, like Tori said, and it doesn't always have to be, let me just make sure this is clear. It doesn't always have to be, more of the what people picture of the force. It
Mm.
can be, I'm gonna like, "But baby, this is for us. Remember we said we had this dream of doing this," or "You wanna get out of this area," or, fill in the blank. So they'll use your hopes and dreams and make it feel like this is for us. This isn't, it doesn't necessarily have to be kind of that angry control. I mean, it still is controlling behavior, but it's a little more manipulative, it's a little more subtle, which is why sometimes people do not pick up on it.
Once someone engages yourselves or your company, what does restoration look like?
Hmm, I know.
So first, we want to get them. We do an intake. That's like the first thing we do
Well,
an
first is the identification.
yeah, to even understand, like,
Yeah.
are they a victim of trafficking? And then we pair them with resources where, okay, are they going to be in the community? Are they going to be in a program? Are they going to, wherever they are in their journey, we start them on and we pair them with, we call them a volunteer advocate. They're trained volunteers that go through an intensive training and background to be able to start walking alongside the survivor. So there can be, again, we start with a lot of the trauma counseling is key to their restoration, and just kind of just being there. You will hear this. It seems so simple. A lot of times it's just someone actually being there and not giving up on them. That's like also one of the first steps after identifying. Um, and I'll let you kind of piggyback.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of, again, we just talked about this a moment ago. A lot of people don't even realize, and most people that we work with don't realize that they're victims until they meet us, until somebody refers them or they go through our jail class. And we just try to meet them where they are, right? So um, everybody's journey is different, and we want to meet them where they are. So some people, they have no idea that there even is a program or something they could go to that would help them. When we say program, most of the time, what we mean is a long term. We're talking 12 to 24 months of restorative, full wraparound services where I have a place to live and a place to sleep that's safe. I'm in a small community. I'm getting counseling. I'm getting maybe it's art therapy or music therapy, whatever that particular program offers. We work with a network of over 40 programs across the country. And we really try to help match a client who desires that path to find the right fit for them. because all the programs are a little different. Maybe somebody's trafficking landed them here, and they actually have healthy family who we could, if we could get them nearer to them. So we might try to find a program for them that's nearer. If
Mm.
it's a woman who's pregnant or has a substance problem, like we have to go through a different step to, and the different programs will accept clients dealing with that. If it's a male client, it's a much sorry guys, but it's there's much fewer resources at this time. People are starting to talk more about it, but men are trafficked too, and it's harder to find a good program for them. And so it really is an intensive matching program. But our ultimate goal for any client is really um, twofold. One is our tagline is freedom, hope, belonging. We want to restore the freedom that we feel like got stolen from them, literally by their trafficker, whether that was their husband or romantic partner or someone else. We want their hopes to be reignited because their trafficker worked really hard to make them lose hope. And we all know, any of us, in those darkest seasons that we go through, it's hope that we're gonna get out of it. Hope that there's something on the other side. Hope, is what gets us through. And the trafficker has worked hard to crush any hopes that they have that there could be a different future for them. And so we start to try to help reignite that in them so they can remember that they did have dreams before this happened to them, that they can still move forward, that this thing that happened to them doesn't have to define them. And then belonging. It is the desire to belong that we all have that trips up so many people into being trafficked. And so what we want to do is recreate, as Tori was talking about earlier, that sense of healthy boundaries and healthy relationships and start to help them see what it looks like by those trained advocates that Tori was talking about. So we start with a small group of people that they can trust that can help them to rebuild that sense of belonging in them. So those are kind of from an organizational standpoint, those are the three things we most want for a client and what restoration looks like. The second part is what does that person want? Right? It's not, we're not about telling people what to do, telling them what path to go on. We want to, as Tori used the word, walk alongside. That's what we talk about. We're not rescuers. We're not saving people. We are coming alongside people who have had something horrific happen to them, something traumagenic that they don't even realize was trauma until that they start to peel back those layers when they're in a class with us or when they, get help from some of our other partners in the community. And so, for them, it might be that they want to start, and we've had clients, they are entrepreneurial, they want to start their own business. Other people just want a healthy, to have a healthy family and a healthy relationship. And, there's sort of everything in between, just like there is for any of us. And so, what restoration and success, if you want to call it that, looks like is going to vary by the person. And we just want to be there to help connect any dots and help them navigate the resources and remove the barriers that are in their way to living their best life.
You know, you brought up a lot of points that really had me think about clients that we've had in the past. And you touched on something. I did have a male client that absolutely was trafficked. His wife, who was an American citizen, brought him over, cut him off of all money. Absolutely. And there was nothing. It just didn't exist. And he even tried to use the VAWA, the Violence Against Women Act, for his citizenship. And it was almost laughed at, even though it is for any gender. But when you're talking to people, you brought up a good point. It's not what future you see for them, which I have a problem with when I'm helping clients. It's like, look at what I could do for you. We forget to ask, what do you want? But how do you first open that door to build the trust where they will actually tell you what they want and not tell you what they want as has been dictated to them by their abuser?
Mhm. That is a really great question. And if our lead case manager was
Right.
here, she would be able to give you lots of color commentary because she's the one on the front lines working with them day in and day out. But I will tell you that the role that we play at FreeKind is really unique. Usually the first question people ask us is, "Where's your house?" They think we have like a safe house, and we don't. Again, our role is to go into the jails where, which we didn't even talk about. Why are they even in jail?
Yeah.
They're in jail because they've committed crimes most often that their trafficker has made them do. And it's not primarily prostitution, which is what most people think. It is what we call trafficking adjacent crimes. So it's anything from larceny to shoplifting to drug possession to fraud to giving a false name to a law enforcement officer, and lots of other things. And so they're in jail and they're cycling in and out because most of them are misdemeanors. Now we definitely have worked with clients that have, have some felonies involved too. But again, they're most often related to their trafficker. And then sometimes it's out of fear or their trauma where they're trying to get away or they decide to try to take it out on the trafficker and they can get caught up in that. But they're in jail because of that, but they're cycling in and out and their trafficker tells them what to do, what to say, how to navigate it, and they're waiting to pick them up on the other side. And if they're not the ones waiting, there are other traffickers waiting. And there's a lot. Well, I don't want to go into that on the podcast to inadvertently help people that we don't want to help, meaning the perpetrators. But anyway, we want to meet them when we meet them in jail to help them understand what's happened to them. And so when we are teaching that class, and it's an 8-week class. Now, sometimes people do get moved around; they don't get to finish all 8 weeks. But when you've spent 8 weeks with somebody and you're just coming in each week and you're talking about these things like healthy boundaries and healthy relationships and addiction and trauma and how childhood trauma can create vulnerabilities and how addiction, impacts the body and the brain and your ability to make the decisions that you want to make. And trafficking, this thing called trafficking and what it looks like. The light bulbs just start to go off. And so we're building some trust and rapport even in that class. And then when our case managers meet with them and do what Tori referred to, like the full intake assessment, we're asking questions in a very trauma responsive way. And so it's rooted in something that a tool that was created by something called the Vera Institute, which if you're not familiar with them, I encourage people to look them up. They do a lot of research and study on our criminal legal system and who ends up in jail and for how long and why, and the impacts that the ripple effects that has. But they created this tool. It's been validated to really understand. To an earlier question you asked too, is this person a trafficking victim or a victim of something else? Um, and so when we do that intake, again, you're asking questions based on that tool that, again, really are starting to help people understand what's happened to them. The other thing is that, and Tori alluded to this too, it's about showing up for them. So I can't tell you how many clients have said to us, I've never had anybody who was there for me. So we show up in the court for them during their sentencing hearing. We show up in the jail. We show up when um, they'll call us when they used again because something triggered them. And so they call us again. Like we see that as a win. They're not hiding from us the way they might from a friend or a family member. That shame is real. And we talk to them about, kind of just sit down without judgment. We're not coming at them like, what's wrong with you? Why did you do that? We come and sit down with them and say, hey, tell us what happened. Like, let's, maybe let's start over again, and give them choice. Nobody's given them choice in a long time. And just those little things and just the simple act of kindness. I'm there for you. I'm there looking in your eyes. I'm not asking you for anything in return. Those things go a super long way to creating a level of trust. And one of the measures for us that I love is that we get a lot of client to client referrals. And what that says to me is survivors know that we're on their side. Survivors know that we're there for them, that this isn't about us or about anything else. This is about them. And I don't think a lot of organizations can necessarily say that. But I do think that that's part of, other clients who have received our services telling other clients, you need to talk to them. I'll give you one example that's kind of interesting. In one of our jail classes one year, we had a client who it turns out was not, she was in jail, but she was not a human trafficking survivor. But she learned a lot from that class. healthy relationships, healthy boundaries, other things to help her. And it was a year later, and she did have a friend who was being trafficked. And she said, "Hey, I took this class a year ago. You need to go talk to those people." So this woman, who was not a trafficking survivor, who took our class, remembered us enough from what she learned to tell it to somebody else, who then was able to get our services, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's great. I love hearing stories like that. I mean, just
Mm.
the impact that you have. What does a culture of consistency and kindness really look like?
Mhm. All right, just never real like the clients say it all the time, like FreeKind didn't give up. They don't give up, and we are. I mean, we said it earlier, Kathy, our lead case manager, she's relentless and she does not give up and she's available and her whole advocacy volunteer team, and just that, and I believe that is the key of because we're consistent. We're doing the check-ins, we're doing the follow-ups, we're even when they're in program, even when they're in jail, all the things. We're definitely gonna be consistent with them, and they see that, they feel that, which again, like Lisa referred to earlier, then they start to refer other, clients to us because they know that they can trust us and that free kind is consistent.
And it really is, again, back to that, what do they need, right? We're not an organization that says, "Okay, let's check the box. Okay, we
Right.
gave you food, we gave you shelter, like, good luck, and here's a list, and good luck to you." It is about, we talk about our organization being very relational and not transactional. Part of the reason we can do that is because we are fully privately funded. So if anybody's listening who wants to help us,
Yes.
that would be great because it's all, private grants and individuals in our two major events a year that fund this. It's not, we don't really have, and people are shocked by this, but we don't have any federal or state funding. I'm actually hoping we'll get a little bit of local funding from a few cities where we work, just because we are in the jails and we are doing that work. But it is about what do they need, and so like right now we're in the Christmas season, and one of the big things we do every year with our partners, we are a faith based organization, so we have a lot of church partners, we have a lot of corporate partners that are looking for a way to help to give back. And Tori, you should talk about what you just did this weekend. But one of the things we do is we don't want any of our clients to feel forgotten. And so if you think about our clients at any one time, there's a group that's still in jail while we're working on their what we call their reentry plan with them. What do you want to do? Do you want to go to a program? Do you want to come back into community? We work behind the scenes with public defenders, probation, sometimes even with the Commonwealth, try to get everybody on the same page. And so we're doing that kind of work for them, which also nobody's ever done before. Back to like, what's different? How do you show the kindness? How do you show up for them in that way? But uh, so we have that group that's in jail. We have a group that's gone to programs, which is up to, I mean, 39% was the last I looked. When I started, maybe 5 to 10% of clients chose programs. And that is full credit to our frontline team. People choosing programs, that's where we see the most success, but they are mostly being taken care of in their program. But again, we don't want them to think that we've forgotten them, especially at the holidays. And then we have the group that's decided to go back to the community, or they finished a program and now they're trying to rebuild their life in community. And so we make sure that they all get something at Christmas, a card, a stocking for those in the community that's overflowing with stuff. And in the jails, all the jails are a little bit different, but for the most part, we're able to send a book by like something from a third party. So normally we'll send a book or an adult coloring book or something for them to do in the jails so that even they get something at the holidays. And we also help their kids. So when we have clients who have kids in the community, we will help them at the beginning of the school year with backpacks for their kids, or we'll help. We get their wants, their sizes, all that stuff from their parents, and we make sure that their kids get a present that's from them, no matter where they might happen to be. So, I mean, those are just some of the ways, but we couldn't do that with all of our community partners.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big part, right? Is when you're in those systems is realizing how much the rest of the world moves on without you,
Yeah.
and not being forgotten is a big part of that. Um, One of the things I think I've seen in talking to people, even just victims of abuse, is how much a generational cycle has kind of taken hold of what's going on. So, how do y'all work with people to try to? So, I'll give you a prime example. I had a client come in who was rightfully going through a divorce for what was very obvious reasons, only for that client's parents to come flying in and being like, "This is just how marriage is. You're dumb. You should stay in this marriage."
Mm.
And I had, usually don't have a very strong toll between my brain and my mouth, so I said what I thought. But how do you help people break the cycle, even when it is something as a relationship as close as parents to children who are perpetuating the cycle?
I'm gonna let Tori answer that, but I will start by saying, we have served many clients whose parent is the one who trafficked them. So talk about a generational cycle that we wanna see broken. That's a huge one. So
Yeah,
I'll let
yeah.
you.
I know. The first thing I thought about was Marcus's story.
Oh, yeah.
So we just give this example. Our prevention project. I don't know if we'll get time to talk about that, but it's our middle and high school curriculum that we go into the schools to get ahead of trafficking. And there's a young man. There's a teacher that teaches this class, prevention, and the young man gets very upset. He's like, you know, has this, really strong reaction to this prevention project. And
Mm,
the teacher's like, what's going on? What do you want from me? Kind of thing. And he's like, you don't understand what you're asking. Like, this is pimping is how we put food on the table. This is how we live. I mean, I can't go against like my family. So the teacher basically says to him, well, why don't you go home and talk to like your aunts? Talk to your grandma, your aunts, your girl, the females in your family and just see, just kind of just curious of what their thoughts would be.
mm,
So he comes back, the young man, Marcus, and tells his teacher, like, what we have to do something. We have to stop this. So really to answer your question, and he ended up becoming the biggest champion for prevention to that we have to stop trafficking. And I believe it's just that awareness. Like Lisa alluded to earlier, what's normal. Sometimes, it's generational that you think that this is okay until someone exposes it, to someone opens up your eye to see a different perspective and something that you were clouded because it was ingrained and taught to you a certain way. So just showing up and showing them there is an alternative to what you thought was normal and that
mhm,
these things do impact other people. So um, really just untraining that trauma and also bringing a resource and a light to what you thought was normal. Here's another way, and here's steps and resources to be able to do that. So
Mm. You probably just mentioned it right before you were just talking, but the prevention project, what is it and who does it serve? And there's a lot I'm sure you want to talk about it, but I just find it so interesting. And what change do you really want to see from it?
yeah. Okay, so yeah, so like for the prevention project is our middle and high school curriculum. We really the thought process was what if we could get upstream of the problem of trafficking? Um, because it's huge. It's a $236 billion annual industry, unfortunately. And so if we want we're serving clients, we're working with, survivors and victims, what can we do to not have them even be victims and survivors? So that's why the prevention project was built or um, created, built, created. Those I couldn't get that word out. Yeah, so it's a bunch of educators and my brain's stopping on me, field experts to bring
mhm.
this curriculum together. And so it's been in over 22 states. We've reached over
120
20,000
some.
students. Our goal with prevention is that it's in every school, every youth group, everywhere that there's a youth, we want this information to be out there because just like traffickers are studying, taking their time, plotting, we want the students to to be aware, to also be, studying and have the knowledge of when a trafficker comes to exploit and trick, that they're ready to say no and have the esteem and
Mhm.
the power to know that that is a trick.
Yeah. So we often talk about with the kids of being equipped to avoid the
Mhm.
traps of traffickers
Yeah.
because as Tori said, like it's not what people used to think. There aren't white vans driving up,
No.
kidnapping kids off the street, right? That's not how it happens. It's happening on your devices, whether that's a phone, whether that's a gaming platform, whether that's your laptop or I don't know, does anybody have a desktop anymore? But it's happening in all those other ways, and it's happening within the context of, I'm your boyfriend, kind of situation. And so we really need
Right.
kids to understand that, the neuroscientists tell us our brains are not fully connected. We don't have our full executive function until we're in our late 20s. So you can imagine that kids from middle school, even all the way up through college, we also do work with colleges and universities because I feel like that, a few years ago, we just identified that as an unmet need. But there are unique vulnerabilities at those different phases of life, middle school, high school, and college. And like Tori said, the traffickers are out there working overtime on that. And we need to be just as diligent, if not more so. And so if we're equipping our kids to know what it looks like and how it happens, then they have the power to see it and to avoid it and to see it maybe in their friends and help their friends, at least ask the right questions. We also want to make sure that the people who work with youth, so all of the teachers and educators and coaches and school nurses and others, that they know what the signs are. So part and parcel of this curriculum is that there is a train the trainer part of this. We're not the ones going into all the schools that we don't have the bandwidth for that, but the schools license the curriculum from us. We keep it updated every year. We update the scenarios. We always have our expert team look at it. We have a curriculum advisory board. There's survivor input into that. So all of those things to make it as powerful as it can be, make sure that the most kids see themselves in the scenarios and in the content and want to do something about it. One of the cool things I think about the prevention program, besides the fact that it helps identify kids like Marcus, there's another student, her name's Katie, who went through she was in the class, but at this point she had already been trafficked, but she didn't know it. So she had a boyfriend, met him from another, older guy, didn't go to her school, ended up getting pregnant. He pays for an abortion, then says, "Hey, that cost me a lot of money. You have to pay me back for that." And so she feels like, yeah, that was my fault. Like she doesn't want to tell her parents that she got this abortion. I mean, tell me how common this is. And so she does what he says and he gets her addicted to drugs. That happens for kids and adults to just mask the pain and the shame. And then, has her do this. And so when she started going through the class, she realized, oh my gosh,
Mhm.
this wasn't just a bad boyfriend. I was trafficked and I need another layer of help. And so she was able to, get the counseling and things that she needed. And so that's what we want for kids if kids have experienced something, even if we always say it's a win if, like you were saying earlier, if a kid is experiencing some kind of something that's become normalized in their home, this opens that door for those conversations. And so whether they've been trafficked or not, if they're able to reveal to a safe adult that some kind of abuse or manipulation or exploitation is happening in their home and they can get the help that they need and not go through that, that's a win. So a lot of times, and we talked about Marcus's story earlier, which is a would-be trafficker. And then we had Katie's story where she was somebody who had experienced trafficking at the hands of a boyfriend and didn't realize it until she took this class. But what's important, two important things about this class are, even if it's not trafficking and it's some other type of abuse or exploitation, if this class opens up the opportunity for kids again to understand at a broader level healthy relationships, healthy boundaries, self-worth, those kinds of things so that they can protect themselves from any unhealthy relationships or experiences. And so while I wish we could say we prevented, hundreds of kids from being trafficked, we'll never know that number. But to the extent that we give kids an opportunity to get help for something that's become normalized in their home and they didn't realize it until they took that class, that's a win. For the kid who is in the midst of being exploited, and they get out, that's a win. For the kid who was already exploited and now they can get the trauma counseling and the help that they need to move forward and live a healthy life and not fall into the cycle. You talked about generational things before or just repeat behavior because now that's something that's happened to them that they've buried, that they've hidden in them. That is so common among the clients that we see and among youth. You know, you tend to not tell the things that, and your trafficker or abuser often makes you, or first of all, scares you into saying you better not tell anybody, um, or they shame you, and it's like, well, you decided to join this chat group or do this, or you said yes to that, and they make you feel like it was your fault. So there are so many people walking around on this earth right now who are carrying something like that. And now they're not all going to go on to be trafficking victims for sure. But again, back to something Tori said earlier, it has opened up a vulnerability in them. So our hope with the prevention project is that we are shining a light on something, that we are equipping kids with some practical knowledge and skills and tools that they need to avoid all kinds of unhealthy behaviors. And in the high school version, there's an applied project at the end. And so there are kids who have done all kinds of amazing things. Some of them have been, more public awareness campaigns, that sort of things. Some kids have decided on a career path from taking this class. Like, I want to be in the FBI. I want to be a social worker,
Wow.
or whatever the case may be. We've literally had that happen. Had students decide on a career because of doing this. So that's like a bonus impact of this program. But if we are helping to build healthier kids with healthier boundaries who understand what healthy relationships look like, that is the biggest win. And then all the corollary, all the things that that prevents or helps get them out of or helps them get care for, is also a win.
Yeah, you brought up social media devices earlier, and I was reading in preparation over the weekend. I was reading about I think they're called narco influencers, and the drug cartels have gotten pretty young girls to go out there and pose with gold plated rifles and try to say this is such a wonderful life because they found out that pretty young girls are less likely to get stopped at the border than not pretty young girls. And so it's becoming a problem where they're showing this, glamorous lifestyle. And then we have, things like OnlyFans, where there's a huge percentage of young girls now saying that that's what they want to do for a career. How do you give parents the resources to stay ahead of these people that are almost perfect at trafficking people, and sucking them in and using these resources? How do you teach the parents to even wake up and pay attention?
Mhm. Right. Yeah, that's also a great question. And while we don't do that, like that's not our main role that we play with parents. We do have trainings for available for parents, but we have resources on our website and we point people to organizations like NCOSE, which is the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. We point to Defend Young Minds and Protect Young Eyes. Those are two other nonprofit organizations. That's all they do is try to, just like the traffickers are working so hard, just what you said, whether it's drugs, whether it's guns, whether it's sex trafficking, or even labor trafficking, which we haven't talked about yet. They are savvy. And again, the kids' brains aren't fully connected. They know that. They know kids are wanting to be loved, they want fame, and they want money. Most of them. Even if they come from a rich family, like if they want a way out, then they need their own money, right? So those three things, they just recycle, rinse, cycle, repeat. So equipping parents, it is almost a full-time job, and we don't, I certainly know, like, I'm a grandmother, so I have, a granddaughter and a grandson, and I I am terrified every time they tell me about the next game they're playing or the fact that they want a phone or I see her, posing for a selfie. I mean, it just is happening younger
Mm.
and younger and younger, and so our prevention education manager does a great job of helping to educate parents and grandparents when we're invited to do things like that, to give them the tools and resources about what is the latest that's happening on technology. Here are some other organizations like the ones I mentioned if you want to keep up with the latest. Nicosi in particular also is, they're big into legislative advocacy. They're calling out major corporations who are either, turning a blind eye to the role they might be playing in it. Our technology companies, they're reaping all the benefits of a world of technology, but honestly, they could be a little more accountable for helping to stem the tide of how and I'm not saying they certainly can control all of the nefarious use, legitimate business gets used for nefarious purposes all the time. We get that. But there are some things that could be done. There's some things that could be people who could be held more accountable because there is so much happening under the radar on the dark web. We had a something the other day and somebody said, "I never even heard of the dark web before
Yeah.
I took this." Again, we are not growing up those of us who were adults, I'm trying to think even what year, like born after, um, 1980, I don't know, we're just not our kids are not growing up in the same world that we did. And so it's
Mhm.
really hard to know what you don't know, which is why it is incumbent on parents to spend a little time educating themselves and not just saying, hey, get off your phone. Hey, do this, don't do that. They don't even know the questions to ask. They don't even know, um, you know, they're just tired of hearing their kids say, well, so and so, Tori's got a phone and I need a
Right.
phone and I'm the only one without a phone or I'm the only one without X or Y. The reasons why and spending the time to explain the why to your kids goes a long, long way. Making sure you keep the lines of communication open with your kids, knowing what little questions you can throw in on that drive home from school or back from practice one day
Yeah.
or on a long car drive, like that you can say that will give you some insight to what's going on with your kids. But there's, so much going on there. And this whole new AI thing, has me a little bit crazed because there was a story last night on the news on 60 Minutes about a young woman who, was in an AI
Oh,
bot relationship, like ended up, this bot was telling her to take her clothes off and to whatever. This little girl, I say little girl, she's 13. She ended up committing suicide. So we know that that's happening and the bullying with this AI thing is real and parents instead of just using chat GPT to answer their questions on any given day need to be very aware of how it's being used against their kids. Because like you say, it's hard to keep up with because they're always out there doing the next thing. And we want to make sure that like, we do the equipping that we can, but we often are putting just resources and tools and pointing people to organizations that that's what they do full time, is try to help parents keep up with that. It's got a little bit of age on it, but there was a documentary done not too long ago that anybody can go out and watch called Childhood 2.0. And there was a group, 3 different organizations, I think, involved in putting it together. But it speaks to exactly what I just said, that we're not growing up in our kids are not growing up in the same world, and how once, the internet started and the digital phone technology, just that it changed the course of the rest of, our future, really, what our society and culture looks like and how we communicate and how we do what we do, how we do life has changed so much, and it's about 90 minutes, but it's worth the watch,
mhm.
because in addition to a lot of experts talking, they interview 2 groups of kids, one group of girls and one group of boys, and you hear their perspective on what's happening
Mm.
at their level and what they're, "Oh, yeah, that's how guys do that," or "That's how," it's eye-opening, and it's sorta like you get to be a fly on the wall to hear what a group of teenage girls and teenage boys think and how they process through some of this.
Wow. And when you were describing that situation from one of your clients, it made me think, and I'm sure others who are tuning in and listening, what are, in your experience, what are some of the misconceptions that you've seen and heard on what exactly is a safe relationship?
Mhm. Yes, there are, like we've said a few times, there's a lot of misconceptions on what trafficking is and what it looks like, and someone's norm and just exposing that, say these are general, but and we can go into more in-depth training on it, but, just little things that you could notice, like, I worked retail for years and management for years, and
Mhm.
just, like, customers coming in shopping and maybe the person that's possibly being exploited doesn't ever look you in the eye. In the relationship, you don't really get to think for yourself. There's someone always speaking for you, telling you what to do, how to feel, making you feel less than, but not even realizing because then you're dependent on their approval for everything.
Yeah, we've had several survivors
Mhm.
share with us that if you were to ask them after they've come out of their trauma, like how they want their eggs cooked, they can't even tell you.
No,
They literally cannot tell you because they've been told what way they like their eggs. What's your favorite color?
don't.
I don't know. They don't know because they've been told, I don't like you in that. You're going to wear this.
Mhm.
Things like that. So, very simple things like that are that you wouldn't think of.
Right.
If those things are happening in your world, that should be a red flag
Mhm.
to you.
Isolation.
Isolation.
Like if that person never wants you around the people that you love or care about,
Mhm.
your community. This is in our prevention videos, like one of them where they never even wanna take pictures with you,
Mm.
like little subtle things that you might not have thought, "Oh, he just doesn't like to take pictures," or "She doesn't like to take pictures, but why?" You know, things that might just seem normal but are not normal can be maybe some things to look at.
So, I mean, I think most of the people listening to this would probably wonder, like, how can I help? So, what does it take to become a volunteer of free kind? I mean, what kind of training, commitment, and probably most importantly, mindset? Like you said at the beginning, knowing to ask people what they want versus projecting what you want for them.
Yeah, yeah. So there are lots of ways you can volunteer with FreeKind. We have kind of two paths. We have we call it our volunteer side, and then we have our volunteer advocacy side, and that's where you do a more in depth training. You actually get to work with survivors. You come alongside of them. That's a 40-hour training. You have to do a level 3 background check, and then there's a psych. There's all these things to make sure you're healthy, also to be able to come
Mhm.
alongside survivors. And then the other way is like Lisa mentioned, we do 2 signature events every year, to help fund the work that we do, and we're always looking for volunteers. I mean, as simple as coming to our 5K and being on the water station
Mhm.
to, helping us table an event, because we do a ton of awareness events all
Mhm.
year long because, again, just trying to help that misconception that trafficking is not the white van or it's not that whole border thing or in the containers. We hear all kinds of, scenarios that we all saw the movie Taken, so that's what we think trafficking is. So just being on the awareness team, we're being literally coming to the office and
Mhm.
helping us, do administrative work, helping us with social media. There I always like to say to volunteers, once you understand what the work that we do and our mission, then I wanna know, what do you do? And we'll make it work for free. Like, what your skill sets are, I'm sure will probably be an asset. Like, we had a volunteer photography for our
Mhm.
5K, a videographer that did the drone, footage for us. That's key because we need awareness. We need we all on social media, that's how we do most of the marketing now. So there are lots of ways for people to come alongside of us tangibly, literally with advocates driving a survivor to a program. So it
Mhm.
starts from 0 all the way up, to 100 of how you can be involved. Even just collecting backpacks, like Lisa said earlier, we help survivors, children, and getting backpacks and just baby shower. We have a 1 hour orientation that we do 3 to 4 times a year, that
Online.
online, so you can just kind of get to know us and see, if it's a good fit for you, and then from there, we could probably get you plugged in somewhere.
Yeah.
And then what can anyone do? Just being aware, just looking at things a little bit different. We have a survivor leader that works with us and says, a lot of times people want to help the poor girl or the beautiful girl that was taken over there, but what about the girl on the street that you think is chose to be on the street? Maybe she didn't choose to be on the street. Like I said earlier, just even being aware, like I was in management for years and probably saw a lot of trafficking victims, and I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, we usually when I'm doing a general awareness presentation, I'll say, if you don't know what to look for, you're never going to see it.
Mhm.
And I talk about how, if you're in the market for a new car, you start to see that car everywhere on the road every time you drive somewhere. But when you're not in the market for a new car, you just see a lot of bad drivers, right? You're not noticing car brands or car types anymore. And it's the same thing with human trafficking. If you don't educate yourself, that's the first thing people can do is just educate yourself, and don't educate yourself on anything that you see popping up in your feed in social media. Let me just caution that if you want some reputable places to look, please look on our website. We have a list of organizations out there who are doing really great work, who have done the research and the work to to give you good information. Don't get your, don't educate yourself through the movies that come out through Hollywood. That's not really what it is. Look for documentaries. Look for books that survivors have written. Not only will you have a better sense of what it really looks like, but you'll also be supporting somebody who came out of trafficking and was willing to share their story in that way. There's you really don't have to have any special skill set to volunteer with us. People sometimes will shy away either because they think it's too big or because they feel like they have to have a special skill. So on the it's too big, I'll just say this. Um, you know, no one can do everything in this space. We don't do everything as FreeKind, but everybody can do something. You can, if you're a
Sure.
praying person, you can be praying over this issue in your community. You can get your church involved. If you're in a workplace, um, you can get your workplace involved. You can suggest that we be one of the places that, so many organizations out there have funds where their employees can put money, or where the organization gives them money to put to a cause. Name us. Are you part of United Way?
Write us
Check
down.
us off or write us in if you don't see our name there. Those are little low hanging fruit ways. Invite us to be or find out through your company, like, hey, can we have them come do an awareness thing for our staff? I want to learn more. Sign up to come to our two events. We have a 5K in the spring. It's the last Saturday in April, almost every year. And one of the first 2 weekends in November is always our gala. Like, put it on your calendar, plan to come. It matters that you show up to those things. I don't know how many people know this, but we frequently have survivors that we've served who are further along in their journey who come to those events. Do you have any idea what it does for their heart to see all these complete strangers come out and support this issue and care about them? Like, it goes a long way.
Wow. Um, I know as we kind of start wrapping up here, and there's so much, I feel like we've only just scratched kind of the surface,
Right.
but we always like to learn from our clients ways that we can do better or do something differently. Is there anything that you learned from survivors as far as the ways that you may approach prevention or even just education?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. Our goal is to have the survivor voice in everything that we do. And so on the prevention side, the curriculum advisory group that we have, while it has educators and law enforcement and others in it, whether if we have if there's a survivor who's willing to serve on it, that's all the better. But if we don't, we definitely make sure they at least review what we're doing or review any changes, tell us what could be made better about it. Because nobody knows something. Nobody understands trafficking better than somebody who's experienced it, right? And so we're always learning things from survivors
Oh,
on the adult side that we work with. And like the example I gave you about like the fact that they don't know, they can't answer simple questions, don't know what they like, don't know how
right.
to make choices, like really understanding. We do a lot of training for our team on trauma and resiliency. Part of the intensive training for somebody who wants to become a survivor advocate involves a lot of understanding of trauma, so that people can show up with compassion instead of judgment. So that's just a really big, that's part of our DNA. That's part of what what we try to do. But we are constantly learning new things about trafficking, about traffickers
Mhm.
from those that we serve, but also, what they need.
Mhm.
And just a constant reminder that they're all different. They're all on their own journeys, and we want to approach each one as an individual, with their own, wants, needs, and desires. Um, trying to think if there's anything in particular that, I could tell you that we've,
Well,
uh
one thing I know you brought up, I believe the survivor said this to you, it's like even asking, are are you being trafficked? Or you're a trafficking victim? More so than are you safe? Even just asking that question, because who's gonna
the
say
reverse,
reverse,
yeah.
right? Like,
Are
don't
you
are
safe?
you
Right? Because
safe?
they don't know
They
that
don't know
term.
that they're trafficked. It's like you ask, like, what can we do and what can we learn from, survivors? It's like I've seen so many of them said that to us. I didn't know I was being trafficked. So if you say that to me, I'm not gonna be like, yeah, I'm being trafficked. So just asking, are you safe?
Yeah.
Is there
Or
one simple thing you could,
when's the last time you ate,
ate? Hmm.
or do you get to keep the money that you make?
Hmm.
Those kind of things. And those are the kind of things
That
when we do specialized training for healthcare professionals or for law enforcement and legal professionals, those are some of the things we help them to understand because they're that's who we target with our specialized training because that whole continuum are definitely going to intersect with those that we serve, and the sooner that they understand and see it, the sooner that the person can get help, the sooner that they will partner with us in terms of the sentencing of the clients, then that we just stop this cycle. I mean, we finally passed a law in Virginia in 2021, and then this year,
Mhm.
a broader one went into effect where it's called vacature, where there's a clinic at Regent University School of Law that helps survivors to vacate their records, basically for certain kind of crimes. Not every crime, but a lot of crimes are now falling under that. That's hugely important for them, and I don't even know why I started telling you that. Um, but it is. I guess it is because it's one of the learning moments we
From
have. Because once
survivors.
they get out, like, there's the getting out, and that's what the world is focused on. "Oh, we gotta get them out of being trafficked." Again, if they don't know they're being trafficked, they're not looking for somebody to help them, and they're not asking for help.
Right.
But once they know that they are, and they're able to get out and work with an organization like ours, and there's some other great ones around this country doing the work of this, but there are all kind of barriers to somebody reentering society and becoming part of community again. Everything from their trafficker has ruined their credit, which they don't know until they go to try to do something and realize that their credit's been ruined. And if that's ever happened to you, your identity's been stolen, that's not an easy thing to fix. Most of, again, our clients have a criminal record, and that is a hindrance to them being able to apply for jobs, to get a good paying job, to even get a place to live that's safe. Like, oh, you have a criminal record. I mean, I always tell people if you line up all the people who need housing, and that spans the spectrum from people, middle, two family working house. What am I trying to say? Two people in a household working to make ends meet, to a single parent, to somebody, reentering society from maybe who had some misdemeanor on their record, and then you line up the trafficking survivor. To a landlord, the ones that we serve are always going to be the highest risk, and they're going to be the last ones chosen to have a place to live. And so there's so many barriers to people moving on with their life, and we've learned about a lot of those in working
Right.
with clients. And so we've been working with people who can help then start to try to change laws and change perceptions about that, so that we can remove more of those barriers for clients, for survivors, so that they can go on and thrive. Because consider this, if I come out and you're telling, I've got a couple of organizations trying to help me, but then everywhere I go in society, the door gets slammed in my face. And I don't have 5 hours to spend on the phone trying to get something straightened out because I'm trying to work or I have a kid to take care of. Um, it can cause people to go back to the life. And that's the one thing we don't want to ever see happen. We don't want anybody to go back to the life because society worked against them. So we just need more people to understand that. And if you're a business owner and you're hearing this, you can be part of that part of the solution. You could be somebody who gives somebody a shot at a job and, works with an organization like ours where we can bring you people who are ready to go back to work, but they don't have any way to get in if they go through the regular routes. and that you're willing to look at it differently. Because honestly, if you understood, like, let's go back to Tori's work when she was working in retail. If I'm probably not going to hire somebody who has, fraud on their record. But if I knew that your fraud was caused by a trafficker, all of a sudden I might look at you differently than I did when I just saw the word fraud on your record. So it's that kind of thing. That's the narrative we want to change. Stop assuming that prostitutes are just prostitutes, that all the people out there prostituting have chosen to be there. 90%, 95% of the time, there's a trafficker behind them. You
Well,
know,
oh,
stop assuming that people who, that people want to be rescued, that they know they're being trafficked. Stop assuming that the young girl who's dressed a certain way does not meet your standards and it's her fault because she was dressed that way. Why don't you find out why she started dressing that way? That might be a better question to ask. So it's really just trying to flip the narrative for people and encourage people to ask different questions that are going to help us in all of the segments of society to not only come alongside a survivor and help see it when it's happening or before it happens, but helping them on the other side of getting out of the life, as it's called.
well, I think both of y'all have taken the time to talk to us today. I mean, I think any time you can have a conversation and start opening people's eyes, it's amazing. So if somebody wants to volunteer or needs your services, what's the best way to get a hold of y'all?
Yeah, you can go to our website. It's freekindva.org, FreeKindva.org.
Okay,
Yeah, that's the
awesome.
best way. There's online for volunteers. But if somebody needs our services that's hearing this,
Oh, yes.
757 is our helpline. And it is called a helpline because there are only six people in this organization, and so we can't staff a line 24/7. But somebody will get back to you, in most instances within 48 hours, to assist you.
If it's an emergency, call
Yeah,
911.
for emergency, call
Okay.
911. You can call the Virginia State Police has an online thing where people can submit tips, or you can dial pound 711 from your phone and let them know that you need help. And there's a whole unit within the Virginia State Police dedicated to this. And then there's also the National Human Trafficking Hotline. So,
Okay. Well, thank you very much, and I hope our listeners were able to learn as much as I did today. And we look forward to talking to y'all next time.
Yes.